Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 341 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get sales on Etsy with Sasha Hutchison. We are going to be diving into the basics of getting started and then going beyond that with top tips as far as how to actually do keyword research for Etsy and how you can turn a digital product that you probably already have and use the algorithms that are over there. So make sure that if you haven't already, that if you leave a rating and review, I so appreciate it. It just helps me to continue to get great guests like Sasha. You can do it in your favorite podcasting app and just leave a quick rating and review. All right, you guys, let's dive in. Hi, Sasha. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
Good. I am so excited to have this conversation about how to get sales on Etsy because I have a lot of bloggers that I know are starting to try to figure out they have their products. They want other ways in order to get them in front of people. But before we jump into that conversation, can you introduce yourself and your business to my audience?
Sure. My name is Sasha Hutchison. I also am known as Your Frugal Friend. That is my Etsy shop name. I'm a top 1% seller on Etsy. I've been selling on Etsy since August of 2019. I come from a background of finance. I actually have a master's degree in accounting. I was an accounting manager, finance director for years in the software and technology space in Texas. But then, the pandemic hit and it took me and all of other people who are middle management out. And so then my kids, I have two young children, and I had to learn to be a full-time mom. I had never done that. So it became a thing that I had to adapt to. And I took that as an opportunity to spin up my business, my side hustle, which was my Etsy shop, into a full-time entrepreneurial endeavor, which I have done. So now I have multiple income streams. I do freelance. I have my Etsy shop. I have courses on how to elevate your digital products like printables. And I have a fillable PDF course on how to transform a basic printable into a high-value printable. I have a course on how to make video for your digital products to sell them better, because video is very transformative for the customer journey and they love video. It's super important to have that now. So I have a course on that. And then I also sell commercial use templates that are SEO optimized to sell and help people make more money with them on their blog, their Shopify, Etsy. However, a lot of people give away as freebies on their blog. I'm coming out with a new template bundle, I think later today. And so, I just have a ton of different income streams. I love to be diversified. I also do Etsy coaching. I just really like what I do. I like to help people make money. That's my number one goal.
Yes, there's so many stories. I feel like yours that didn't start off wanting to be on the online space necessarily, but COVID hit and people pivoted quickly. And I love your story, especially as a woman who I know was also probably a teacher at the time, as well as mom, and trying to run your business. So it just goes a long way to show that it is possible in order to run your own business, no matter what the circumstances may be. So let's talk a little bit about Etsy. How long does it typically take to get your first sale on Etsy?
Okay, so it really depends. On average, it can take 1 to 3 months to make your first sell on Etsy. Organically, I made my first sell in 1 month on Etsy. I think I had maybe 10 products up at the time. And I think that a lot of people who first start on Etsy, they give up quickly because they don't realize that, it's not just because this is like my mantra when I'm coaching people, it should be in their mind. Just because you make it doesn't mean someone has to buy it. So every single time you're creating new products, you're getting better. I personally do not have any graphic design experience. So when I jumped into making printables on Etsy, I first did what I knew, which was personal finance, because I'm an accountant by trade. So I made spreadsheets. I was selling spreadsheets and I was selling printable versions of those spreadsheets for people who weren't comfortable using spreadsheets. And so that's what I started with. And I did the keyword research and was able to get my sales pretty quick. And I think I hit 100 sales in 3 months because I was really focused on doing that research and knowing what customers wanted. So it takes 1 to 3 months. And of course, if you're guessing and not using any of the tricks of the trade to do it strategically, then it could take even longer.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that keyword research, whether it's similar to blogging or not. But before we do that, what have you actually found are the best things to sell on Etsy? You obviously started with printables. Do you feel like that's one of the best things?
I do think printables are one of the best products to sell on Etsy, and it comes down to margins. Okay, so there's different people and different types of sellers on Etsy. There's people who sell, like craft supplies. Other people make physical products. There's digital products. There's even a vintage. It's all about selling vintage, like resell on Etsy. And so when you look at the top sellers on Etsy, the people who are making the most money sell high volume, low price. And whether if that's digital products, printable products, or craft supplies. Some of the biggest sellers on Etsy are selling just beads and just basic craft supplies. So if you think about that as someone developing your own products, you have to think, okay, well, if I'm buying something at wholesale, even if it's a physical product, I sell it for high and I'm focusing on margin. So with digital products, the margin is on average 80%. And what that means is you take your revenue, your sales revenue minus your expenses, and that equals your profit. Profit divided by your sales revenue is your profit margin. So with physical products, it can be as low as 20%. That's all you're taking. You sell something for $1, your take is 20%. And that's after the cost of making it and all this stuff. But with digital products, you make it once and you can sell it forever. So the margins are 80%. So when it comes to not having to hold inventory, there's no physical inventory behind me in my house on shelves, just sitting there collecting dust because it's not selling. It's all in the digital world. It's sitting in the cloud. And I feel like that is the best thing to sell on Etsy is digital products because you're not having to hold inventory and the margins are so good.
Yes, there's no supplies that have to go into actually putting money towards it. The only thing that you're really giving up is your time in order to create those printables, which for many bloggers, they're already doing that. There are so many bloggers that I feel like give away free printables on their sites that they could easily turn into a paid printable on Etsy. So I love that. So what are the steps to take to start selling on Etsy? You mentioned keyword research, which is one of my favorite things to talk about, especially where we are right now in blogging with needing Google to be able to find us. Kind of walk us through those steps.
Okay, so when you are wanting to, start an Etsy shop, keyword research is down the line. So first you're going to start and you're going to say, okay, I want to open an Etsy shop. Opening an Etsy shop costs $0. And that's the beautiful thing about Etsy. If you want to do Shopify or anything like that, you have to invest money into Shopify. You have to do the subscription, all these things. There's no subscription fee for Etsy. So first you'll do that. Then you're going to have to find a name. And so I like to do one of those. You go to the website, it's like type in name checker for Etsy and just go through and find a name. My tips for making a name are make it something that's easy to spell and something easy to remember. So a lot of people I'll see will do it, something like Kate's Papery Cafe or something really weird. And you're like, no one is ever going to spell it right. No one's ever going to remember that. So that's why I did Your Frugal Friend, easy to remember. If I analyze within this keyword research tool, eRank, all the things that people type in through because you can integrate it with your Google Analytics to see how people come to my Etsy shop. The top 3 searches are Your Frugal Friend. And that's because it's easy to remember. People are vetting me. I like that people verify that, yes, I'm not lying. I am a top 1% seller. So it's like getting that name, opening your shop, getting your name, and then filling out the shop sections. And then you're ready to identify the product that you want to make. The number one thing that you need to do is you need to just go and see if there's demand for it on Etsy. And that's what you can definitely do. So someone may think to make someone wanted to make something super niche. I was coaching the other day that you go to Etsy, that thing doesn't exist. So that could be good or bad. That means either you're like creating the next unicorn product, or there's just no demand for it. So just going to Etsy and doing that market research is definitely step number 1, even before keyword research, because you want to see if there's demand for that thing that you have in your mind. So, if your heart is set on that one thing, you should, as a business owner, if it's not a thing, be able to brainstorm how to make it a thing. Maybe you can identify it and break it up into something that is a thing on Etsy. Maybe you're wanting to make this like 52-page workbook, but workbooks don't necessarily sell well on Etsy. Well, turn it into a planner. Try to make it, strip it, make it less intense. And then maybe you can eventually add people onto your email list and then get them to buy that workbook down the line via your blog. But you want to try to make something that has mass appeal, because that's how you can focus on that high volume sales model that I do for my Etsy shop to make the most money. So then when you've identified the market for your product and that it does exist, then you can go to keyword research tools like eRank, Insight Factory. You can go to, there's a whole bunch. My favorite are Insight Factory and eRank. And you just go in and you type in, your product name and see if it has high search volume and low competition. That's the goal. That's the number one goal. That's how it is with, finding keywords for blogging, all of it. You want to be the big fish in the small pond. The riches are in the niches. You want to make sure that you're capturing the most leads that you can with the long tail keyword that you find.
So the keyword tool that you're talking about, you said eRank, and what was the other one? I apologize.
Insight Factory. That's a newer keyword research tool. It's actually developed, which is what I love, by a couple. The man is a data analytics scientist. So when he's a data scientist. So when I used to work in software, the highest paid people at the company and the most valuable employees were the data scientists. They were building out these software algorithms for the programs that they were selling. And then his girlfriend, they're in Holland, I believe, or Denmark or Holland, but it was interesting because she actually has an Etsy shop, and she came to him and she said, I want to get better keywords. Build me my own tool that I can use to get the best keywords. And the thing I love about Insight Factory that eRank doesn't have is you can type in a keyword, like printable planner, and then you can sort the data to see who had the most sales in the last 7 days using that tool. And then you're like, wow, I can really see that there is demand for this thing that I want to make. So I love that tool because an Etsy seller herself developed it. And so she has skin in the game. She knows what it's like. So I really like that tool for those reasons.
Okay. So those are obviously then specific to Etsy. It's not like they're pulling anything from Google. They're pulling just from Etsy. And go ahead. I'm sorry. You were going to.
I was about to say Insight Factory actually doesn't pull anything from Google, but eRank does. And so that's how they're different. Insight Factory is very laser focused on just Etsy data, and eRank likes to pull in Etsy and Google data. So that's how they're different. Yeah.
What is the cost difference between the two? Because I know my listeners are going to yell at me if I don't ask that question.
Okay. So you can actually there's a difference, obviously, with all these tools. So Insight Factory, they have a free trial, and that's, a certain amount of days. And then I believe the tool is an annual price after that. It's one of the more expensive tools. But eRank is one of the cheapest tools. And that's where I always recommend people start. You can get it for free indefinitely. There's only, they have a max on the amount of searches you can do with any of those free tools, but you can use it for free indefinitely. And also when I first started, it was a little more cost prohibitive. I think it was $29.99 a month. Now they have a basic plan where it's $5.99 a month. You do not have to commit. You can have it on for 1 month. Get a bajillion keyword ideas and then turn it off, and you've spent $5.99. So I always tell people, if you're going to invest in one thing, you can make printables with Canva free. That's free. But one thing you invest in, do eRank Basic to really get good data for your Etsy shop and make more money more quickly.
Yes, that's so helpful, because we've talked about, and listeners always hear me talking about different SEO tools as far as for Google with Key Search and SEMrush and all these different ones. And one of the questions is always, okay, what is it going to cost me? What am I looking at? Is it the difference worth it? And for me, yes, it's lower cost for eRank, but when you said it was Etsy specific, that's what I'm looking to go for. That just makes more sense to me, because you're getting so much data specific just to Etsy. But I love that. So what would you say that your top tips are to successfully sell on Etsy?
Okay. Number one top tip to sell on Etsy is to do keyword research first before you create. I coach so many people especially people who bought a lot of PLR, and there's a lot of PLR out there. And even with this, so people want to buy commercial use templates to save themselves time. I always tell them, did you do research to see if that template idea is something that even sells on Etsy? And they're like, no, I just thought it was cute. And I'm like, that's not enough. That's not enough. It might not be something that'll make you money. And the goal is always to make money, right? So you want to do that market research paired with that data analytical research. You want to always do that before you create, before you even buy anything. No, don't buy any templates. Don't create anything, because then you like we've discussed, this business is all about your time. You have to put time in the beginning. So if you're you can't buy that time back. So if you're wasting your time, then you'll get frustrated. And so you want to make sure you're doing that due diligence of doing the keyword research first before you ever create anything, just to assess demand. And then also, don't be hard on yourself. I see people are like, oh, my designs are terrible. And I'm like, well, then, don't shoot for making those beautiful wedding invitation products first. If you're not a classically trained graphic designer or illustrator, let's go for more utilitarian products like a checklist. The medication trackers are really popular right now on Etsy. And that's a one-page table, pretty much. You can make that in Excel, or you can make it in Canva. You can make it in any design program quickly and easily. So go for those low-hanging fruit, easy projects first, because then that will create small wins when you start to sell those. And that will empower you to get more creative and make more complex products. So keep it easy. I started my business doing one-page products, and I was able to scale fast that way, because then more products in your shop is more chances to be found. So you definitely want to do that. Another tip is, do not feel like you have to create all 10 listing images to sell your product on Etsy. And this is very Etsy specific advice, but Etsy itself, most of the advice they give to new sellers is for physical product sellers. And of course, if you're selling coffee cups, you want to do 10 pictures. It makes sense. People want to see the angles. They want to see it in use. They want to see the scale of the product. But for a digital product like a one-page game, you might need 2 or 3 listing images. Also, if you're spending all that time creating 10 listing images, that's a lot of time. So you just want to make it easy on yourself. If you go do market research on Etsy, you'll see some of the biggest sellers with like 100,000 sales are selling these one-page super basic games, and they have 2 listing images. So figure out ways to save yourself time so you can create more products to make more money. I think those are my definite top tips for people. Those are the things I see repeatedly that people can improve on.
Those are great. I love those. So now let's kind of switch. What is the biggest mistake made when trying to get sales on Etsy?
So the biggest mistake obviously is creating just because you're like, I really want to make this thing that no one could possibly buy, but I'm doing it because I want to do it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, I love that you're having fun and you're having a good time, but you cannot get upset if no one buys it. Don't do it. You can. You have to accept that. If you're just creating based on what you want to make, then you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for others. You have to clearly, you didn't identify who your customer was clearly and what they would want to buy. So that's when I first started. I am very cheap. I know my name of my shop is Your Frugal Friend, but I'm extremely cheap. My husband has told me repeatedly, I'm cheap to a fault. So that means that I identified my customer base to be budget shoppers between the ages of 18 and 34. And originally I was doing personal finance products. So they may be people who don't know how to budget, but want to. So I have to create a product that creates value for them at a low price. And that was my customer avatar. That's who in marketing, that's what you call it. And that's who I identified as the person who's going to buy my things. And now I have multiple product lines. I'm not niche specific. So that's another thing that people fall in the trap of when they first start is like, oh, I have to have a niche. I have to have a niche. And I'm like, no, you don't. You can be product line specific. So I identify who's my customer for my product line. I might do 5 products in a product line. And I reuse, like I'll do a scavenger hunt product line. I'll create the game once, and then I'll make it season specific, like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, Father's Day. I hit the big ones for scavenger hunts. And that way I'm using the same template over and over again. So I do product lines, and I think that people get too wrapped up in the niche thing. They're like, oh, well, so-and-so told me this. And I'm like, well, how many sales do they have on Etsy? I can't find their Etsy shop. And I'm like, then who cares what they have to say? If I can't prove that they know what they're talking about, then that advice, that pro tip is totally irrelevant. I've proven that you can do a product line model, and I think that people get too wrapped up in niche things for Etsy. For blogging, niche is more important, but for Etsy, it is irrelevant.
I love that. And I think that that's so important to really point out, because you talk about a customer avatar, which is definitely something we talk about in blogging as well. We call them an avatar when we're talking about your audience. And we always stress like what problem are you solving for your audience when you're creating content. Same thing with Etsy, but not having to niche down, because like you said, you know who your avatar is, they're going to want multiple products. So I love this idea of a product line. So with that in mind, tell me about your 30 fillable product ideas that my audience can actually grab for free.
Okay, so my freebie is a guide on 30 fillable product ideas. So when I first started creating printables, this is a trap that a lot of new sellers, mindset trap that a lot of them fall into. So many people do. They don't even get started because they say, oh, Etsy's saturated. There's already so many people. And I say, if I cared about saturated markets, if the world cared about that, then we'd have one flavor of toothpaste. We'd all be playing with one type of ball. We'd all be wearing the same dress, so you don't understand that, like, your take on things is what makes it valuable. You have a lot of value to add to whatever, even just a basic daily planner page. You have your own spin on that. Mm-hmm. So when I started, I said, how am I going to differentiate myself from the herd and completely eliminate the competition? Because I'm a very competitive person. But so I said, I'm going to make my products fillable PDFs, because everyone has filled out a fillable form. If you filled out, you got a form from the doctor's office, you type into the fillable form, filled your data. I said, how can I use that technology to make my printables extremely valuable? And so I created all my printables with calculated fields. I taught myself how to do it. I taught myself how to do all fillable form fields, how to use Adobe DC, which you can do a free trial of to make your own fillable printables. That's what I teach in my course. But in the product ideas guide, I give you all the different product ideas that you can to sell on Etsy that you can make fillable. So it's not just, budgeting products. No, it's anything. You can make a set of love coupons and add a page with fillable form fields. And that's a product that's a customizable product. You can also make a handprint craft and then add fillable form fields to it at the bottom from to, and then put, little Susie, and then from, or, from little Susie to grandma. So you can add it on any kind of product to make it more valuable, more customizable. And if you are to look at products on Etsy, you start to see a trend. The more customizable ones sell at a higher price point, and they sell the best. And so it's just, and you don't have to make all printables customizable, obviously, but if you're trying to compete in a space where that adds more value and that's the tipping point for the customer to make that purchase, then that's what you should do, is try to make a more customizable products. And so that's what this guide shows you, is all the different types of products that you can make fillable.
So good. I love it. We're going to link to that in the show notes to make sure that people can jump over and grab it. My audience, you also know you can always send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose, and I will make sure to send that link directly to you so that you can grab that and really get started with thinking about how you can start to monetize via Etsy as a possibility, especially if you're already doing printables and looking at it in a different light. Sasha, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and my audience. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And if I was able to plant a seed in someone's mind that they can take their existing blog content and monetize it in another way, then I've done my job for the world.
Perfect. I love it. All right, well, there you have it. Clearly, Sasha could have continued to talk to me for quite some time about how to make sure that you are getting sales on Etsy. And I loved the way that we were able to tie it together with understanding that when you are talking to your audience on your blog and when you are also looking at that customer avatar within Etsy, it is very similar. But then when we look at the niche, it's where you have to start to look at Etsy a little bit different as far as that product line like Sasha talked about. Make sure if you haven't already that you go and grab her 30 fillable product ideas. There are so many great things that you can actually implement right away by using that. And as always, I appreciate you all so much if you've already left a rating and review. And if you haven't, I'd love it if you would do so. It takes 2 seconds to do in your favorite podcasting app. Just scroll down below where you're listening and you will see the spot for a rating and review. All right, you guys, until next time, I will see you all then.